Good afternoon, I hope everyone's well today. Thank you for watching, it is appreciated as always. I've seen a few clips here and there regarding the Tories, the soon-to-be extinct Tory party, saying you can't trust Labour, you can't trust Labour on this, you can't trust Labour on that. And they're still quite cocky, they're still quite arrogant, and I don't see any genuine contrition from them. Most of the country feel that way. Most of the country will never go back to the Tories. People in the north, people in the Red Wall that lent their vote to the Tories for Boris Johnson to get Brexit done, they will never vote Tory again. They will be voting Reform. Reform are on track to get an overall majority in this United Kingdom at the next election. That's pretty clear. What you're going to be getting in the next few years is you're going to get a lot of attacks on Reform UK saying they cannot be trusted. They cannot be trusted. They've never been in government before. What are you playing at? That's their biggest strength, the fact that they have not been tested in government yet. Labour have been tested in government, and they've managed to get in about 14 or 15 months to where the Tories got after 14 years. There's some people that are saying that they could sneak back in because the vote will be split on the right and the left. I don't think so, and I'm not buying that. The people that will always vote Tory, they're always going to vote Tory. That's maybe a dozen constituencies. Then you've got people that will always vote Labour, they will always vote Labour, and again, that's probably no more than 50 constituencies all over the country. Everything else is to play for, in my view. People are saying, oh, Rupert Lowe of Restore Britain, former Reform UK MP, he's going to defect to the Tories because he's got a role on a committee. No, definitely not. You get this all the time. You get this all the time with committees and select committees in the Commons and all over Parliament, actually. It's very much everybody can be nominated for a committee, and it doesn't mean anything of the sort. My particular view is that Reform will get an absolute majority. They'll probably get a stonking majority, over 400 seats, possibly 500 seats if we play our cards right. The Tories are going to be reduced, and reduced more. And why is this? Because the Wets actually control the party, the 1922 committee, and most of the sitting MPs are Wets, they're not Dries. You've got a few Dries, like David Davis. Most of them are Wets, and they are essentially Liberal Democrats that love to be voted in. They like winning elections. They should defect to the Lib Dems and actually be done with it. It won't help the Tories, but at least we know everybody is where they're meant to be. I'm going to play these clips now of the... I laughingly use the phrase conservatives. They can't be trusted on anything. Lest we forget that the net zero that we're currently in, that was all because of Theresa May bringing net zero into law. Another useless Tory. They had 14 years to get the houses in order, and they failed completely. They will never be forgiven.
Well, on the question of immigration, we've been very clear that if we were lucky enough to be in government again in the future, we would ensure that we bring migration right down, not to the tens of thousands, not even to net zero immigration, as some on the right call for, but actually to net emigration, where more people are leaving every year than are entering the country, so that we can give the United Kingdom breathing space, help young people onto the housing ladder, help people to access public services, and ensure that over time we can become a more united country with better integration than we've seen in recent years. And we would ensure this actually happens this time with a legally binding cap set by Parliament, so the public can have trust that politicians are going to finally do what they say they're going to do, not let them down.
I want to be very clear with Robert Jenrick here, okay? He thinks signing something into law makes it enforceable. That's not true. Parliament is sovereign. We know that it can repeal any law on the statute books. They choose not to do that. They could end the scourge of immigration to the United Kingdom tomorrow. They don't need anyone else's permission. He thinks if he goes on to a TV show like with Maya Sousa here and shows some contrition, granted, he does seem a bit apologetic, that we're going to ignore the fact that they could have done this for 14 years when they were in power, and they chose not to do it for several reasons. Signing something into law doesn't mean that you have to do it. Tomorrow, they could change their minds and not sign it into law. They can just repeal it. They can do this on the drop of a hat. This is how Parliament works. Do not be fooled. Do not actually listen to this idiot. He is treating you like a fool. I won't treat you like a fool. My Tusi's a good guy. He's on the right side of things. This isn't a critique of him. I actually like his channel. This is a critique of the calibre of politician. This is the same Robert Jenrick that was in government with Boris Johnson. Why am I going to trust you? Why am I going to believe you? You have zero credibility. You have negative credibility. Nobody in their right minds would trust you again. The only people that you've not peed off are the people that will always vote blue. They will always vote blue. Regardless of what you say or what you do, they will vote blue. Those are the only people that you can actually appeal to. About 40 to 50% of the Tory voters at last election have already defected and they're not coming back. The centrist Tories are dead. They're not coming back. They left with Brexit. Let's be real on that point. Let's see what else he's got to say.
As has happened time and again over the last 25 years. And on illegal migration, by leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, by changing our human rights laws that have been abused so flagrantly in recent years by illegal migrants and the left-wing lawyers and activists that are around them, we can actually secure our borders and detain and deport everyone who comes here illegally, either back home to their own country or to safe third countries.
I want to be clear, leaving the ECHR, while I agree with it in principle, and it should be a reality, that's not the issue here. I've been consistent on that point from day one. What the issue is the application of ECHR. We can ignore it. Just because something is unlawful doesn't mean it's illegal. There is a distinction there. Even if we didn't adhere to our own 1998 British Bill of Rights, which put most of ECHR into British law, we could say, right, okay, you're interpreting that wrong, and just clarify the homegrown legislation that was put in by Tony Blair. But leaving the ECHR is a bit of a nothing burger, because Parliament, as always, is sovereign. What the difference is between the British and the Europeans, which is why I always say, yes, I am European, but there is a distinct difference, is they have a top-down approach on the continent, and we have a bottom-up approach in the UK, at least in principle. Now, because of the oddities of a 1,000-year-old country, England, then into the United Kingdom, we have got a shit ton of laws on the statute books that should be repealed, the thousands, hundreds of pages of tax legislation, tax law, all of this, and that is an oddity of our system. So in principle, we have a bottom-down approach, but in practice, we're stifled by red tape. The point I'm trying to get is this is why the British people rejected European rule, because it is the top-down approach that they have on the continent that we don't have here, or we just want to be left alone. We mean this from our politicians, we mean this from people in the street that we don't really know. We just want to be left alone. That's the British or the English way. Now, with the Europeans, because they've always had the top-down approach of do this from on high, whether that's France, Germany, Greece, what have you, because they've always had that method of doing things, they just ignore it. If they don't want to do it, they just ignore it. Whereas the British, being proper and doing things the way things that should be done, we implement everything to the letter, so that is the distinction. So when they talk about leaving the ECHR, and I'll put Nige into this as well, when they talk about leaving the ECHR, that is a bit of a nothing burger. We could actually just take the initiative and just disapply the things that we want to be disapplied. Anyway, that's the first clip, and he's begging forgiveness, saying we're going to do remigration, we're going to do mass deportation. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. You had 14 years to do something about it, and you chose not to. Fool me once, shame on me. Sorry, fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. So now I'm not going to fall for it. I'm not falling for it. And I implore anybody listening to this drivel not to fall for it. Alright? Then we look at the second clip. The second clip is the Birmingham police after the Southport unrest last year.
Salam alaikum. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the leaders and elders that have afforded me this opportunity to speak to you personally. The reason I'm speaking is to underline my commitment on behalf of the organisation to protect all the communities across the West Midlands. And in particular, I want to underline that message to your good selves.
Where are my community leaders? Me as the white British majority population, where's my community leaders? Can I nominate myself as a community leader to be a liaison between my people and the police, and I can instruct them when it's appropriate for them to intervene in my matters? Would that be allowed? Alright? This is the point of this clip, and this is why I'm bringing it in. Law and order in England and Wales is not devolved anywhere. It's not devolved in the Senate in Wales, and is controlled by the Westminster. So this type of appeasement of ethnic minorities for fears of being called racist, this is the same playbook that allowed the grooming gangs all over the United Kingdom to occur. Okay, this is for 50 years under Labour or the Tories. Now, this was last year, alright? You could say, well, the Tories weren't in power. The College of Policing, which actually informs policy for police, which is arm's length, another arm's length government organisation, an NGO or non-government organisation, they dictate to the police how to behave. That was brought in under the Tories, under Cameron and Clegg, their coalition governments. That's why I'm playing this.
In your congregations. And that's very, very acute to me, having seen some of the scenes that have played out elsewhere within the United Kingdom. I know, because we have policed events over a long period of time, that it's a regular occurrence across the West Midlands. However, what we've seen elsewhere has definitely caused concern in communities. And especially, I've listened to our guests at our open day this last weekend, to representatives of your communities.
Again, why do certain demographics get their own community leader to speak on their behalf to the police? I'll ask again. I might even write to Cheshire Constabulary asking, can I become a community leader for, my community, to be a liaison between the police and Cheshire Constabulary? Let's see if I get a response.
Have expressed their concern about what's happening nationally. So, number one, I want to say very clearly that we won't tolerate those types of intimidation or that criminality in any way, shape or form.
But will you tolerate the criminality from your communities, your minority communities, when they attack police stations? Like happened to Greater Manchester Police in Rotherham, when we had those thugs that beat up the police officers in Manchester. They went to Rotherham Police Station and started tearing the place up, trying to put the windows through. You will tolerate that, but you won't tolerate it from anybody else.
From anyone who lives across the West Midlands. Number two, there is one tier of policing that applies to all of us.
Okay. He's a comedian. Okay, I'll give him. He is a comedian. All right. He should go a stand up tour around the country trying to convince people there's one tier of policing. All right. No one buys that. No one buys that anymore. All right.
And that means that we police without fear or favour.
No, you don't. You police for your ethnic minority groups. You police to keep them safe. You police to cover their tracks. You police to make sure that any retribution, rightly or wrongly, that is brought down on these communities for the transgressions that they have committed doesn't happen. That is precisely what you do. That is what you are for. You don't look at the brown person to say they have committed a crime, they need to be arrested. You look at the reaction to the brown person by the white man and say that's what we need to control. This isn't specific to West Midlands Police. This goes for the police service in Northern Ireland, and it goes to Police Scotland. But I'm calling it out here because this was the Tories doing. This was all under the Tories' watch.
Number three, we don't tolerate racism and discrimination. And in particular, some of the actions that I've seen on the TV screens, and you will have seen, have appalled me, and no doubt have appalled you.
What appalls me is when you get certain communities from abroad that don't want to come to Britain anymore because they feel unsafe. And that's what appalls me. It appalls me when we've got sectarian politics on the mainland of the United Kingdom. That's what appalls me.
And And my additional point is to say that you will see more police officers in and around communities. If there are events whereby the extreme right wing, for example, want to protest or turn up at a location very much unexpectedly or sporadically, please make sure that the police alone deal with those situations. We want to deal with those situations directly. We will deal with them positively and professionally on behalf of everybody that lives in our communities across the West Midlands.
We'll leave that one there. That's a bit more waffle, but this is essentially a hostage video. He's been invited in by community leaders to give this address, to give the illusion that he's got some authority over these communities. The reality is that these police officers and the majority white population in the establishment don't actually feel they have lawful authority over these people, even though they're in the United Kingdom. That is why we are policed, and the laws are applied to us, and they're interpreted for the minority communities because of the Equalities Act. And when did this come in? You guessed it, under the Conservatives. Anyway, we'll leave that one there. And finally, we have the former Prime Minister himself, Bojo, admitting why the Boris wave happened.
We had with the back end of COVID, though, was that it looked as though, and we couldn't see the numbers, we were flying blind, and we couldn't see how many were coming in, but all we could see...
Which is weird, the Home Office should have the numbers.
They're not in real time, they don't.
No.
They're not, and so all we could see was inflation. So by the end of 2021, beginning of 22, inflation is suddenly getting into double figures. And you know what, that's a very, very bad...
Yes.
And that one, it was... I think the Treasury basically believed that was being caused by partly by the labour market seizing up, and you know, people couldn't get a pair of hands to do the jobs that they needed done, and there had to be a fix for that. Otherwise.
Okay, I'm going to pause that one now. This is the former Prime Minister actually admitting that the only reason that the Boris wave happened was to stop inflation. Now, as Enoch Powell, who was the originator of this theory that most people agree with now, the reason you get inflation is when you increase the money supply. What happened during lockdown and everyone was put on furlough? We had the QE, we had the quantitative easing, which is the increase of the money supply into the United Kingdom, into our coffers, into the system. And that triggered inflation. And lockdowns triggered inflation. Alright? And then to fix that, they opened the borders, which is what I've said for years and years. The reason why the Boris wave happened was to mask the impact of lockdown and the QE, the quantitative easing. There was a very strong argument in my view that the government should have nothing to do with monetary policy at all in terms of having the power to create money. Well, no. It should be pegged to something. Fiat currency has been a disaster for the Western world. Alright? You put everything on the never never. If you want to have some money, you just print more. And what happens? Everybody's living standards get worse because your money is less valuable than it was. And he's admitting to this on TV. Now, there are countries around the world that didn't lock down. I think Sweden is one in particular. There were other ways to deal with the pandemic. He chose to go with the crowd. That's not a leader. This is what the Tories do over and over again. They are not leaders.
As I assume. I'm just trying to analyse it in retrospect, because this was not something that the government set out to do.
So that's my stall. I don't think that the Tories have learnt the lesson. I would never vote for them again. I would never vote Labour again. Reform is the battering ram that we have to destroy the Uni Party. Advance UK, they'll probably pick up a few seats as well. And other parties quite possibly could as well, like UKIP. I'm very pragmatic on this. It's about what's going to win the election, and the destruction of the Uni Party is paramount concern to me. As always, your mileage may vary. You may think I'm talking out my rear end. Please, comment below, like and subscribe. Let's have the conversation, enjoy the debate, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.